Hello everyone, welcome to Cashcroft TV. My name is Kalen Ashcroft. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ages of Empires, where we will be going through all the major world empires throughout history. As well, we will highlight a leader from each empire as well to learn more about the empires as well. In this episode, we will be covering the Satavahana Dynasty and Gautamiputra Satakarni, a very important empire and a very important leader that I did not know much about going into this research, so I hope you learn as much as I as well as the Xianbei state and Tanshihuai. Pardon me if I'm pronunciation, but I believe I practiced that, and Xianbei should be the correct pronunciation. So also a empire or confederation that I did not know too much about as well, so this was a great learning opportunity for me as well. At the end of the episode, we will have a comparison between Gautamiputra, Satakarni, and Tanshihuai of the two respective empires in the style of Plutarch's Parallel Lives to learn a bit more about both of them. So, without further ado, we will begin with the first empire and leader as well. So, the Satavahana Dynasty. So the Satavahana Dynasty was an ancient Indian dynasty that played a significant role in the political landscape of the Indian subcontinent. While not much is known about their early history, they rose to prominence around the 1st century BCE, before Common Era or before Christian Era as some people refer to it, and ruled for several centuries. Therefore, we will seek to find a detailed account of its rise and fall to see why maybe states might succeed and fail today, and as well what caused this phenomenon to rise and also to disappear over time. So starting with its rise, the foundation. The Satavahanas are believed to have been founded by Simuku around 230 BCE in the Deccan region of central India. Simuku established a capital at Pratishtana, which is in modern-day Pathan in Maharashtra province. I have not been to that province of India, however. I have been fortunate to go to India, and I'd like to go back again someday if I endeavor to. As for the expansion of this empire after this, the early rulers of the dynasty expanded their influence by conquering neighboring territories. Gautamiputra Satakarni, whom we will cover in specific detail, one of the notable early kings, is credited with significant military successes and territorial expansion, formally making it into an empire. As for trade and economy, the Satavahanas controlled key trade routes, especially those connecting northern and southern India. Their rule saw economic prosperity, with flourishing trade contributing to their wealth. As for the golden age of the Satavahana dynasty, under Gautamiputra Satakarni, regarded as one of the most illustrious rulers of the dynasty, Gautamiputra Satakarni ascended to the throne in the 2nd century CE, Common Era, or Christian Era as some also call it. His reign is considered a golden age marked by military triumphs against foreign invaders, including the Sakas and Western Kushatraps, which are somewhat similar in nomenclature to satraps, who are like governors. We will cover some more of the satrap regions as well. However, we have covered the Sakas. As for art and culture in this golden age, the Satavahanas were patrons of art and culture. Amaravati, the capital of the Satavahana kingdom, became a center for Buddhist and art and sculpture. The Amaravati stupa, adorned with intricate carvings, stands as a testament to the cultural contributions. So we'll see some images of it coming up. As for Buddhism and religion under the dynasty, the Satavahanas were tolerant of various religious practices, and Buddhism flourished under their rule. They made significant contributions to the construction of the Buddhist stupas and viharas. So we've covered many previous in empires that have developed Buddhism, such as the Indo-Scythians, the Indo-Greeks, the Magadha region, or the Maurya Empire, for example, and many of them did espouse Buddhism. And we've often considered the question, to what extent did Buddhism arise as a result of these individual factors? For example, if the Satavahana dynasty never existed, would Buddhism still be as prevalent today? I think so, but maybe not quite to the same degree. But impossible to speculate. As for the decline, however, of the Satavahana dynasty, starting with internal conflicts. The later period of the Satavahana dynasty witnessed internal conflicts and power struggles among various branches of the royal family. These internal disputes weakened the dynasty and made it susceptible to external threats. So a common theme across almost all the empires we've covered is that internal and external factors sort of feed into each other. Having internal strife inevitably causes difficulties in repelling invaders, for example. And this is also a theme in Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire thus far, from me. As for foreign invasions, the external factors, the Satavahanas faced invasions from the Ikshvakus and later from the Shakas and Pallavas. These invasions, coupled with internal strife, contributed to the decline of the dynasty. So, starting with the internal strife is sourced from disputing claims to the throne. So that's a common theme across monarchies. As for the end of the rule, by the 3rd century CE, the Satavahana dynasty began to lose its grip on power. The exact circumstances leading to the downfall, however, are not exactly clear. So I often quote the Library of Alexandria, which they always pictured burning in flames. There's actually paintings of it burning in flames, but the Library of Alexandria actually declined over many centuries. So a lot of these empires, like the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, it was a prolonged period of decline, and seems to be somewhat similar to Satavahanas. There's no definitive event that causes decline. These invasions, coupled with internal strife, also contributed to the decline of the dynasty. The exact circumstances leading to their downfall are not entirely clear, but by the 3rd to 4th centuries CE, their influence had significantly waned. As for the legacy, cultural contributions, despite their decline, the Satavahana dynasty, or the Satavahanas, left a lasting impact on Indian culture. And furthermore, and also in shaping the political landscape. Their support for Buddhism, art, and architecture enriched the cultural heritage of the Deccan region. As for the historical significance, the Satavahana dynasty played a crucial role in shaping the political landscape of ancient India. Their reign marked an era of economic prosperity and cultural development in the Deccan. Thus, while the Satavahana dynasty eventually faded from the political scene, its contributions to art, culture, and regional history remain an integral part of India's rich heritage. And some of the nuances in modern-day India can be observed through studying the Satavahana dynasty. But as we cover the maps, we've started to cover a lot of empires in this region, and we can start to see how they really connected. But Satavahanas are probably the leading one in not the south, but center, the huge portion of India, as we can see. And for example, to the north, there's the northern satraps, western satraps. We've covered the Indo-Greeks, we've covered the Indo-Scythians, we've covered many other regions up there. The Maurya Empire under the Magadha episode as well, so started to really get a better picture of India. In the first episode we had covering India, we also have the Indus Valley civilizations, which I hope you endeavor to check out, or have already. If you have done so, thank you very much. So as for the leader, we will be highlighting, as alluded to, Gautamiputra Satakarni. So you must include the Gautamiputra Satakarni because there were also 2 other leaders by the name of Satakarni before this Satakarni, Satakarni the first and Satakarni the second. I thought of making the discretion of calling him Satakarni the third because he is the 3rd Satakarni to be king. However, I'm not necessarily sure if he is the 3rd Satakarni, if he's not the 4th or the 5th, or if he's even lineally exactly connected to the Satakarni 1st and 2nd. However, he did come from royal lineage, so he's likely related to them, but I don't necessarily know if we can call him Satakarni the 3rd, because I've never heard of him referred to as such. As for Gautamiputra, that means literally son of Gautaputra, I believe. So, nonetheless, that was one of his fathers. It's his family name, we could say. So, Gautamiputra Satakarni. The Satavahana Dynasty had several notable leaders, and pinpointing a single most important leader can be challenging due to the gaps in the historical record. However, Gautamiputra Satakarni is often considered one of the most illustrious rulers of the Satavahana Dynasty, and therefore we seek to biograph his life here to learn a bit more about he and his empire. So, birth, Gautamiputra Satakarni was born in the 2nd century BCE, and he ascended to the throne in 86 BCE. The remainder of the video, we might just refer to him often as just Satakarni, but I'm referring to Gautamiputra Satakarni unless otherwise specified. So he was born in the 2nd century BCE and ascended to the throne around 86 BCE. Gautamiputra literally means son of Gautami, while Satakarni is a title common to several Satavahana kings. So maybe to call him the third might have been an incorrect practice. However, there had been a Satakarni the first and there had been a Satakarni the second. Such matronymics also appear in the names of other Satavahana kings, including Vasishthaputra Pulmavi, which is Pulmavi, son of Vasishti, and these do not indicate a matriarchy or a matrilineal system. The real explanation for the matronymics seems to be that since the rulers married a number of wives from different royal families, a prince was best identified with reference to his mother. So that's an important note. It wasn't necessarily matrilineal, but they carry a mother's name because their fathers had so many wives. So kind of a different purpose. It wasn't necessarily a feminist reason. It was more so a paternalistic reason to carry the mother's name. As for his early life, little is known about Gautamiputra Satakarni's early life and upbringing. He likely came from a lineage of Satavahana rulers, inheriting the throne from his predecessors. As for his military, so there's no, did not seem to be strife that he needed to overcome to get to the throne. So that's different from many of the leaders we have covered so far. As for his military achievements, Gautamiputra Satakarni's reign is marked by significant military achievements. He led especially against foreign invaders. He successfully repelled the incursions of the Western Kshatrapas and the Sakas as well, consolidating the power of the Satavahana dynasty in the Deccan region. As we mentioned, the Indo-Scythians likely had some Sakas descent as well, so much fighting against them, but also against the western satraps, the northern satraps, Mitras as well. As for the Golden Age, which came under his rule, under Gautamiputra Satakarni's rule, the Satavahana dynasty entered a golden age. He expanded the kingdom's borders, bringing stability to the realm. His military successes and political acumen contributed to the prosperity of the dynasty. As for the defeat of the Western Kshatrapas, one of Satakarni's most notable victories was against the Western Kshatrapas, a powerful dynasty ruling parts of Western India. His triumph over the Western Kshatrapas is well documented in historical inscriptions showcasing his military prowess. So Western satraps, from that tradition of the Achaemenid Empire where they would call their leaders satraps, then into the Macedonian legacy, which brought some large Greek influence but maintained the satrap names, such as the Indo-Greeks, such as Greco-Bactrians, etc., used the name satraps. As for his patronage to Buddhism and culture, Gautamiputra Satakarni was a patron of Buddhism and supported the construction of the Buddhist stupas and viras, temples, types of temples. The Amaravati stupa, adorned with intricate carvings, is a testament to the commitment to fostering cultural and religious practices. As for his administration and governance, Gautamiputra Satakarni was not only a skilled military strategist, but also an effective administrator. His reign saw a period of stable governance, contributing to the overall prosperity of the Satavahana dynasty. As for his death, however, and succession, the details surrounding Gautamiputra Satakarni's death are not well documented. However, after his demise, the Satavahana Dynasty continued for several more centuries, with varying degrees of power and influence under different rulers. So unlike many of the leaders that we highlighted who covered the Golden Age, after him there was still much more success for the Satavahana Dynasty. So he was maybe better off than some of the other leaders at ensuring a legacy that was steady after his own success. As furthermore, while the specifics of his reign is often, while the specifics are not fully documented, his reign is often remembered as a high point in the history of the Satavahana Dynasty. And it lies in his military success, political acumen, and contributions to cultural and religious landscape of the Deccan region. While there's much ambiguity surrounding his life, his impact on the Satavahana Dynasty and the broader history of ancient India is undeniable, and therefore a very important leader, but nonetheless encompassed the pinnacle of the golden age of the Satavahana Dynasty, and was successful in fending off and conquering, particularly in the West. So, very important leader. So now to discuss the content of the slide. So in the top left we have a coin with his image, and I wasn't able to determine what it is, but it seems I see perhaps 3 eyes. I think the eyes are a very important symbol throughout many different cultures. Also I see a pyramid too, which is also a very important image too. I could be completely wrong, but that is his coin. Title, we have the Satavahana Dynasty and Satakarni. Gautamiputra Satakarni, to be specific. It was named Andras in the Puranas, so another name for it, and it was an ancient Indian dynasty based in the Deccan region. So significant leader, Gautamiputra Satakarni, Empire, Satavahana Dynasty, period, late 2nd century BCE to the 3rd century CE, modern day location, India, million square kilometers, 0.5, million square miles, 0.19% of the world, 0.37%. So after covering those such as Sparta and Athens, this is much larger region, maybe not as contested of a region, but there were certainly military individuals and military communities there, so not an easy plot of land to have conquered, and significantly larger than those famed Greek city-states. So percent of the world, excluding Antarctica, 0.37%, so over a third of a percent, so quite large, especially considering there had been civilizations in India for a long time before. Capital city was Pratishtana, as well as Amaravati, the more religious focused city. Government was a monarchy led by a king. Common languages, Prakrit and Sanskrit. Religion, Brahmanism, and Buddhism, and population was likely between 10 and 20 million, so quite large, but small compared to the population of India today. In terms of other images, to the right of the coin we have a sculpture from Pauni, which is an ancient Vidarbha, where coins were also found, and it's got beautiful images on it, and it has Naga Mukhalinda protecting the throne of Buddha at Pauni, and it was created in the 2nd to the 1st century BCE, so very old, showing that Buddhism was sort of important in the Satavahana dynasty even in its earliest years. And to the right of that is a cave number 19 of the Satavahana king Kanha at the Nasik caves, produced in the 1st century BCE. Below that, there's the Sanchi Buddhist complex, famous for the Great Stupa. So it's beautiful that it's that old, and it's absolutely beautiful architecture, I find. And to the right of that, we have Satavahana architecture at cave number 3 of the Pandavelni caves in Nashik, circa 150 CE. And it was started during the reign of Gautamiputra Satakarni. So they were able to produce architectural achievements over multiple leaders, over multiple legacies. So it shows sort of an investment in the future. And once again, beautiful architecture as well. Below we have that it was preceded by the Maurya Empire, which we covered in the Magadha Empire episode, and the Kanva Dynasty. And it was succeeded by the Western Kshatrapas, the Andhra Ikshvaku, the Chutu Dynasty, Vakata Dynasty, Pallava Dynasty, and Abhira Dynasty. We might mention many of these, but many of them we're not going to as much detail to dedicate a full episode because some of these are a little bit smaller, but we have covered the Maurya Empire and the Western Kshatrapas, as mentioned. They fought significantly against the Satavahana Dynasty and against Gautamiputra, Satakarni specifically. To the right, we have a full list of kings from the 1st century BCE to the 2nd century CE. Simku from 100 to 70 BCE, Kanha, 70 to 60 BCE, Satakarni I, 70 to 60 BCE, Satakarni II, 50 to 25 BCE, Sivasvati from the 1st century BCE, Gautamiputra, Satakarni, 2nd century CE, Vasishthiputra, Pulumavi, the 2nd century CE, pardon me for my pronunciation, Vasishthiputra, Satakarni, the 2nd century CE, Shivaskanda, Satakarni in the 2nd century CE, and Yajna Sri Satakarni in the 2nd century CE. My apologies for my pronunciation. As mentioned in my defense, it's that I've read these things and I haven't necessarily had them told to me. Someday I endeavor to discuss these more, so perhaps my pronunciation will get better with time. But I mean, no offense, I'm trying my best here. And in the top right, we have a map showing the massive area of land in India in which they ruled, bordering the northern satraps, the western satraps, the Indo-Parthians, the Indo-Greeks, the Indo-Scythians, all of which we've covered as well. So that is the Satavahana Dynasty and Gautamiputra Satakarni. Now moving to the Xianbei state. Xianbei is the correct pronunciation, but it's spelled Xinbeistate in Latin characters. So the Xianbei state refers to the political entity established by the Xianbei people, a nomadic group of East Asian origin. The history of the Xianbei state is complex, marked by periods of unity, fragmentation, and interactions with other regional powers. While the available historical records may not provide exhaustive details, we will seek to find a history of its rise and fall to see why this phenomenon came to be and came to pass away. Starting with its rise, starting with its nomadic origins. The Xianbei people were originally a nomadic group living in the eastern Eurasian steppes. They were known for their horsemanship and mastery of mounted warfare. I think of when mounted warfare, how fascinating that is. For example, if you have a bow and you shoot the bow at 200 miles per hour and the horse is going to 70 miles per hour, the velocities add together, so it's going 270 miles per hour, so it adds. So that's why I think it's particularly innovative. In my copy of the Old Testament, David, he's running at Goliath when he throws the stone or slings the stone, which is added velocity. So I think it's just a little physics problem that a lot of people don't necessarily consider, but that gives a bigger tactical advantage to horse archers, even over a standing archer. The arrow goes faster. As for, they were known for their horsemanship and mastery of mounted warfare, as we will also see with the images. As for their leadership and unity, Tanshihuai is often credited as one of the early leaders who played a crucial role in unifying various Xianbei tribes during the late 2nd century and early 3rd century CE. We will have a specific biography of him as well. His leadership laid the foundation for a more cohesive Xianbei political entity. As for confederation formation, the Xianbei Confederation emerged as a political and military alliance of various Xianbei state tribes. This confederation was instrumental in consolidating their power and expanding their influence over neighboring territories. So consolidation, we covered the Amphicydionic League, and they were referenced in the Federalist Papers, how a confederation was insufficient. They needed a federal government, according to Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. So this was a confederation as well, like the Amphicydionic League, but nonetheless it was strong enough militarily, at least to threaten many of the neighbors and to maintain its borders. But as we'll see, maybe the confederation was not sufficient, according to, and Alexander Hamilton and James Madison might have been able to use this as evidence, perhaps, but it wasn't their area of focus. They drew a lot from the Abbé de Mably. As for confederation formation, the Xianbei Confederation emerged as a political military alliance amongst various Xianbei tribes. And it was instrumental in consolidating their power and expanding their influence over neighboring territories. As for that mentioned expansion and interactions, with southern expansion first. The Xianbei state expanded southward, encroaching upon the territory of the Han Chinese. We covered the Han Dynasty, very important dynasty and the largest to date up until the Han Dynasty of the Chinese dynasties. This expansion led to the conflicts with Han Dynasty, and that's why largely the Great Wall was built over many different Chinese dynasties to repel the invaders, barbarians of the north, and the Xianbei Empire were certainly one that manifested that threat, resulting in expansion that led to conflicts with the Han Dynasty, resulting in both cooperation and tension at different times. So there was periods of cooperation as well. As for political intricacies, the Xianbei rulers engaged in complex diplomatic relations with neighboring states, including the Han Chinese, Korean kingdoms, and other nomadic groups such as the Xiongnu. We've covered the Xiongnu as well, which I hope you endeavor to watch. That was an earlier nomadic tribe above, or a nomadic confederation that also threatened Chinese dynasties, but a little bit before the Xianbei Empire, but they were contemporaries as well for a period. Also important to note that the Xianbei were also in communications with Korea. As for the fragmentation and decline, which inevitably, well, not necessarily inevitably happened, but so far all the empires that we've covered have declined. As for internal divisions, like many nomadic confederations, internal divisions among the Xianbei tribes became a significant factor in their decline. The lack of strong central authority led to the internal strife and fragmentation. External pressures, which naturally coincide with internal pressures. The Xianbei state faced external pressures from various directions, including conflicts with other nomadic groups, Chinese dynasties, and the emerging powers in the region. As for the Northern Wei and Southern dynasties, the Northern Wei, a nomadic state founded by Tuobo Xianbei, emerged as a powerful successor to the Xianbei state in the northern region. Meanwhile, in the south, Chinese southern dynasties took advantage of Xianbei's weakened state to expand their influence. So like as we saw with the Seleucid dynasty, sort of break off, a sort of independence, as we see with the Northern Wei was sort of broke off from the Xianbei Empire. As for the legacy, and starting with cultural exchange, the Xianbei state played a crucial role in cultural exchange between the nomadic and sedentary communities. Their interactions with the Han Chinese and neighboring civilizations influenced the cultural landscape of the region. As for the impact on successor states, the Xianbei state, despite its decline, had a lasting impact on the political dynamics of the region. The Northern Wei, with its Xianbei roots, became a major political force in northern China. While the Xianbei did not endure as a unified political entity, its historical significance lies in its role as a nomadic confederation that shaped the geopolitical landscape of the East between nomadic and sedentary societies, not to mention ruling over a massive plot of land. Now moving to Tanshihuai, for a specific biography, or Tanshihuai. Pardon me for my pronunciation, but we'll go with this most phonetical. I'll go with Tanshihuai. I have looked it up, but my pronunciation is still a work in progress, but nonetheless, I hope I can convey the ideas properly. So the Xianbei state did not have a single universally recognized leader whose life is extensively well documented, probably because they did not have the same level of centralized leader as many other empires in this, amongst its contemporaries. The Xianbei people were organized as a confederation of tribes, and leadership often shifted between tribal chiefs and rulers. One prominent figure, however, is Tanshihuai, who is sometimes considered a key leader in the early stages of the Xianbei unity. Although historical records are limited, a factual biography we will endeavor to produce here of Tanshihuai. So, starting with his life and leadership. As for his rise to leadership, because little is known of his early life, Tanshihuai is believed to have emerged as a prominent leader during the 2nd century and early 3rd century CE. His leadership was crucial in uniting various Xianbei tribes into a confederation, marking a significant phase in the formation of the Xianbei state. So, before his time, there was still much fragmentation in the Xianbei state. As for his consolidation of power, Tanshihuai's leadership was characterized by efforts to consolidate the power of the Xianbei tribes. Through strategic alliances and military campaigns, he aimed to strengthen the Confederation's position in the region. As for his relations with Han China, Tanshihuai's interactions with the Han Chinese were complex. At times he engaged in diplomatic relations, accepting titles and gifts from the Han court. However, there were also periods of conflict, with Tanshihuai leading the Xianbei against the Han forces. So nuance, they weren't always against, they weren't always for, but he was willing to accept titles and gifts. As for military campaigns, Tanshihuai was known for his military campaigns expanding the influence of Xianbei into the northern territories. His ability to mobilize and lead the Xianbei warriors contributed to the Confederation's success in the steppes. As for his legacy and later developments, successor states after Tanshihuai's time, the Xianbei state experienced internal divisions and external pressures, as mentioned. The Confederation eventually fragmented, with different Xianbei groups playing roles in the rise of successor states like the Northern Wei. Perhaps if his leadership were to be maintained, maybe there never would have been that division. Maybe the Xianbei Empire would have maintained and not divided into such as the Northern Wei. As for his cultural influence, Tanshihuai's leadership and the Xianbei state's interactions with neighboring civilizations had a cultural impact. The exchange of ideas and practices between the Xianbei and Han Chinese contributed to cultural diversity in the region. As for the historical context, Tanshihuai lived during a crucial period of nomadic and sedentary interactions, and his leadership was shaped by the geopolitical dynamics at the time. The Xianbei's role in the northern and southern dynasties of era China played a part in the broader historical narrative of East Asia. It is, however, important to note that due to the nomadic nature of the Xianbei people and the limitations of the historical record, his significance lies in the details of his life are not extensively documented. His significance lies in his contributions to the early unity of the Xianbei tribes and the formation of the Xianbei state during a transformative period in East Asian history. So maybe if it weren't for him, we could never consider the Xianbei Empire an empire itself. It would have just been a group of non-united tribes. So kind of this great book, Wolf of the Plains, that was a great friend of mine introduced me to about Genghis Khan, and it's a great story of how he united the tribes. And that's the sort of parallel story I'm seeing with Tanshihuai, although Tanshihuai came many years before Genghis Khan. So now to discuss the content of the slide. So title, the Xianbei state and Tanshihuai. They are a nomadic empire. Title, and Xianbei Confederation of Proto-Mongolic people. Significant leader, that should say, not god. Tanshihuai was not a god. That was from the previous slide, I should have amended that. Empire was Xianbei, period, circa 93 to 234 CE, Common Era. Modern location, Mongolia and China, as well parts of Russia and Kazakhstan. Million square kilometers, 4.5 million square miles, 1.74. So a massive plot of land. It's significantly larger than the Satavahana Dynasty, which we are also covering in this episode. However, this was a large area of land that wasn't as densely populated as India or even other parts of China. So, and a lot of it, they were not settled. They were nomadic people sort of ruling over vast swaths of lands by horse. But percent of the world, nonetheless, is 3.34, which is one of the largest empires we have covered so far. And that's excluding Antarctica. Capital was near the Orkhon River, and we do not know a specific name, and that's in Mongolia. Government was a monarchy despite having many different tribes for periods. Common languages was Xianbei, so they did have their own language. Religion, shamanism, so even shamans, and Tengrism. Population was hundreds of thousands to millions. So despite having much more land than the Satavahana Dynasty, population was likely much less. So, in terms of images, in the top left, we don't have an image of Tanshihuai, so I have an image of a soldier on horseback known as a Rong, a Xianbei archer from the tomb of the former Yan. So I was fascinated in the horse archer, again, adding velocities. But if you shoot backwards, if your horse is running 70 miles per hour and you shoot backwards 100 miles per hour, the arrow is only going 30 miles per hour. So, to the right of that, we have a flying horse plaque. So once again, showing the reverence for horses, but also for the mystical, because I don't believe, as far as I know, there were flying horses at that time. So some sort of creativity and belief in the mystical. To the right of that, we have an iron broadsword used during the Han Dynasty, so perhaps you can use in warfare, likely used in warfare between the Xianbei Empire and the Han Dynasty. Below that, and it was found in the Xianbei tomb in Yushu in the Jilin province. In the bottom right, we have a dragon buckle. So once again, showing they have a lot of buckles in terms of their remains, so important, I guess, to carry things, carry their clothes, but also dragons, so which is something that was certainly revered in ancient China and in many other civilizations too, but something that was revered in the Xianbei Empire. And to the left of that, we have some more belt fasteners as well. So full list of rulers, we have Bianhe or Pianhe in 49 CE. We have Yuo Chouben from 54 CE, Manchu 54 CE, Wulan 120 CE, Qi Si Qin 121 to 132 BCE, Tanshihuai 130 to 181 CE, who we've covered specifically, Helian 181 to 185 CE, Kui Tu 185 to 187 CE, Qianman 190 CE, Budugen 187 to 234 CE, and Kevineng 190 to 235 CE. So these are, pardon me for my pronunciation, but that's the full king list as we know it. And in the top right, we have a map showing the massive extent of land of the Xianbei Empire. So, massive squad, 3.34% of the world, excluding Antarctica. Massive plot of land, but much of it was not settled by sedentary people. So that is the Xianbei state and Tanshihuai. Now for comparison, the Stark of Plutarch's parallel lives. It seemed a bit unfair to have two names, Gautamiputra, Satakarni, not just Satakarni, and comparing him to Tanshihuai. However, Satakarni might be confused with Satakarni I or the Satakarni II, and I could not necessarily call him Satakarni III because I don't never seen him referred to it as that, and I don't necessarily know if he's the third, not the fifth, or the sixth. So Gautamiputra, which is his matrilineal name, son of Gautamiputra. So we'll have to keep that. And Tanshihuai don't have another name for him, so there's but nothing putting one above the other. These are quite two different leaders. These leaders are quite different, but nonetheless we'll see where they're similar and where they're different to learn about their individuality. So while Gautamiputra Satakarni of the Satavahana Dynasty and Tanshihuai of the Xianbei state lived in different regions and during distinct historical periods, we will still seek to find a comparison drawn based on their roles as leaders in nomadic and semi-nomadic societies. Therefore, we will seek to find a contemporary comparison here. So starting with Gautamiputra Satakarni, his region and time. Gautamiputra Satakarni lived in ancient India, specifically during the 2nd century BCE to the 1st century CE. His reign was marked by the flourishing of the Satavahana Dynasty and the Deccan region in the Indian subcontinent, likely its golden age. As for his leadership and achievements, Gautamiputra Satakarni was a notable ruler known for his military successes, particularly against foreign invaders like the Western Kshatrapas and the Sakas. His reign is considered a golden age with contributions to art, culture, and the promotion of Buddhism. It's impossible to measure how great his significance was in terms of establishing Buddhism. Maybe it was inevitable. Maybe he could not have slowed it. Maybe he relatively did slow it. But nonetheless, he's considered a net force promoting Buddhism. As for his cultural contributions, Gautamiputra Satakarni was a patron of Buddhism, and his rule saw the construction of Buddhist stupas and viharas. The Amaravati stupa stands as a testament to the cultural and artistic achievements of his time. As for Tanshihuai, his region in time, Tanshihuai lived in ancient East Asia, specifically during the late 2nd century and early 3rd century CE, so almost 400, maybe more than 400 years gap between them. He played a significant role in the early stages of the Xianbei state, a confederation of nomadic tribes in the Eurasian steppes. As for his leadership and achievements, Tanshihuai is recognized for his leadership in unifying various Xianbei state tribes, contributing to the formation of the Xianbei state. So he actually formally created the state, whereas Satakarni maintained the state, expanded it to some degree, but led to its golden age. So slightly different, but neither of them are necessarily founders, and neither of them are necessarily the ones who lost an empire either. So both of them are definitely not tragic, certain. So therefore, and furthermore, with his interactions with sedentary societies, and furthermore, his reign was marked by military campaigns and efforts to consolidate Xianbei power, and his interactions with the Han Chinese. As for his interactions with sedentary societies, Tanshihuai had complex interactions with the Han Chinese, involving both cooperation and conflict. He accepted titles and gifts from the Han court, but also engaged in military campaigns against them. So it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily know if Gautamiputra Satakarni was also engaged in diplomacy, but both of them were known to have fought battles. As for some comparative points, nomadic leadership, both Gautamiputra Satakarni and Tanshihuai were leaders of nomadic or semi-nomadic societies, with their power rooted in the ability to mobilize and lead warriors on the steppes and in ancient India, respectively. So, but I would say Gautamiputra Satakarni is quite sedentary, but some still consider that semi-nomadic, whereas Tanshihuai was quite nomadic. As for their cultural exchange, both leaders had interactions with sedentary civilizations, Han Chinese in the case of Tanshihuai, and various Indian cultures in the case of Gautamiputra Satakarni. So they both engaged with sedentary peoples, leading to cultural exchanges and influence, and so both were open to trade. So there have been some empires that we've covered that have not been favorable to trade, but most of the most successful ones have had some degree of trade, unless they were large enough to be self-sufficient. As for their military exploits, both leaders were involved in military campaigns, expanding their territories and their influence, so both increased their territories. Gautamiputra Satakarni's victories against foreign invaders and Tanshihuai's role in consolidating Xianbei's power through military means illustrate their military prowess, and both overall successful. And both, as far as we know, were not assassinated, which many leaders we referenced have been assassinated, so that's certainly something they have in common as well. As for the legacy, Gautamiputra Satakarni is remembered for his contributions to Indian art, culture, and Buddhism. Tanshihuai's legacy lies in the early stage of Xianbei unity and its impact on geopolitical landscape of East Asia. So Tanshihuai is known more for his military endeavors, whereas Gautamiputra Satakarni also has that cultural and religious component too. But both were found important to trade. Thus, while Gautamiputra Satakarni and Tanshihuai led in different regions and cultural contexts, both were influential leaders in nomadic or semi-nomadic societies, contributing to the historical narratives in their respective regions. So they were also very both outward-looking. They both had a lot of relations with neighboring states and peoples, not too focused on their own state, but not at the cost of their own state, but not solely focused internally, that's for sure. Their roles in cultural exchange and military exploit showcase commonalities in the challenges and opportunities faced by leaders in these varieties of societies. I mean, nomadic and semi-nomadic, but I would add that Gautamiputra Satakarni was relatively sedentary based on all the temples they built. But Tanshihuai was certainly nomadic, but they also did have some sedentary aspects. But both of them are somewhat similar in that. But both of them were both led to the glory and expansion of their states, which makes them more similar than different in probably their most recognized respect. So thank you very much for watching this episode of Ages of Empires, where we covered Gautamiputra, Satakarni, and Tanshihuai of the Satavahana Dynasty and the Xianbei state. This is Ages of Empires. My name is Kalen Ashcroft. This is Cashcroft TV. Thank you very much for your support, and I'd be very grateful if you continue to do so. Thank you so much.